Hello everyone. Tonight I will be reading from the H.P. Lovecraft, the Dunwich Horror. It's Saturday night. We're going to be alcohol warning. Yes, there will be basically just wine drinking and a nice fireplace. So anyway, what is it? I'm just doing a cheap Tuscan wine, nothing special, right? Whoops, nothing special. So, the prelude, this was actually recommended by a friend of mine, or requested. They like horror movies. Gorgons and hydras and chimeras, dire stories of Celiano and the Harpies. They reproduce themselves in the brain of superstition. But they were there before. They are transcripts, types of archetypes are in us and eternal. How else should the recital of that which we know in the waking sense be false came to affect us all? It is with the narrator naturally conceptive terror from such objects considered in their capacity of being able to inflict upon us bodily injury. Sounds terrifying. They date beyond body or without the body. They would have been the same that the kind of fear here treated is purely spiritual. That is the strong in proportion as it is objectiveless on earth. That it predominates in the period of our sinless infancy, that our difficulties, the solution of might afford probable insight into our intermundane condition and a peep at least unto the shadowland of pre-existence. Charles Lamb, Witches and Other Night Fears. Okay, thank you, Charles, for that terrifying prelude. That was actually kind of difficult to watch too, read too. So, anyways, cheers. Now here's where the book starts, and I'm going to do this in multiple parts. I'm going to probably stop after part 2 So after part 2, I'm just going to read through part 2. And then there's like several pages. There's part 4, 5, 6. So I'll break this up into multiple nights. When a traveler in north central Massachusetts takes the wrong fork at the junction, holy shit, this is hot. Crap. Hold on one second here. Wow. Okay. It looks great, but it's really burning my back. Holy cow. When a traveler in north central Massachusetts takes the wrong fork at the junction of the Aylesbury Pike, just beyond Dean's Corners, he comes upon a lonely and curious country. The ground gets higher, and the briar-bordered stone walls press closer and closer against the ruts of the dusty, curving road. If you've ever been to Massachusetts, holy crap, that is true. The trees of the frequent forest belt seem too large, and the wild weeds, brambles, and grasses attain a luxuriance not often found in settled regions. Yeah, it's actually pretty true and accurate. Weird. At the same time, the planted fields appear singularly few and barren, while the sparsely scattered houses wear a surprisingly uniform aspect of age, squalor, and dilapidation. Without knowing why, one hesitates to ask directions from the gnarled, solitary figures spied now and then on crumbling doorsteps or on sloping, rock-strewn meadows. It sounds like it's pretty accurate. Those figures are so silent and furtive that one feels somehow confronted by the forbidden things with which it would be better to have nothing to do. Yes. And let's see, nothing to do. When a rise in the road brings mountains in view above the deep woods, the feeling of strange uneasiness is increased. The summits are too rounded and symmetrical to give a sense of comfort and naturalness, and sometimes the sky silhouettes with especial clearness the queer circles of tall stone pillars with which most of them are crowned. Yes, Massachusetts is full of crumbling old buildings and lots of old ruins and abandoned towns. I grew up in a place near Dogtown, which is an abandoned colonial era place. Gorges and ravines of problematical depth intersect the ways, and the crude wooden bridges always seem of dubious safety. When the road dips again, there are stretches of marshland that one instinctively dislikes and indeed almost fears at evening when unseen whippoorwills chatter and the fireflies come out of abnormal profusion to dance in the raucous, creepily insistent rhythms of stridently piping bullfrogs. Oh God, bullfrogs are the most terrible things. They are loud and they're scary. They would just sit there on a rock and be like, "This is my rock. You move." The thin, shining line of Miskatonic's upper reaches has an oddly serpent-like suggestion as it winds close to the feet of the domed hills among which it rises. The one thing that I don't know, out of character here, where is it? Whippoorwills. I don't know what whippoorwills are, but I think I do. It actually makes it sound like whippoorwill, whippoorwill. Oh God, I hated that. Oh, but that was, yes, okay, I do know what that is. I haven't heard a whippoorwill in a long time, and wow. They do get really freaking annoying. Whippoorwill, whippoorwill. Okay, sorry. It's bringing back, I grew up in that area, so I mean, there were long nights where you can't sleep because of those damn freaking, I don't know if it's a bird or dog, I don't know what the hell it was. It was just annoying. And we don't have them down here in the south where I live now, North Carolina. So, as the hills draw nearer, one heeds their wooded sides more than their stone-crowned tops. Those sides loom up so darkly and precipitously that one wishes they would keep their distance. But there is no road by which to escape them. Across a covered bridge, one sees a small village huddled between the stream and the vertical slope of Round Mountain, and wonders at the cluster of rotting gambrel roofs bespeaking an earlier architectural period that of the neighboring region. It is not reassuring to see on a closer glance that most of the houses are deserted and falling in ruin, and that the broken steepled church now harbors one slovenly mercantile establishment of the hamlet. One dreads to trust the tenebrous tunnel of the bridge, yet there is no way to avoid it. Once across, it is hard to prevent the impression of a faint malign odor about the village street, as of the massed mold and decay of centuries. It is always a relief to get clear of the place and to follow the narrow road around the base of the hill and across the level country till it rejoins the Asslebury Pike. I've never heard of the Asslebury Pike, but I'm sure it's awesome. Afterward, one sometimes learns that one has been through Dunwich. I wonder if Dunwich is actually a made-up, it probably is a made-up town. Lovecraft liked to do that stuff. So, let's see. Outsiders visit Dunwich as seldom as possible, and since a certain season of horror, all the signboards pointing toward it have been taken down. The scenery, judged by any ordinary aesthetic canon, is more than commonly beautiful. Yet there is no influx of artists or summer tourists. 2 centuries ago, when talk of witch blood, Satan worship, and strange forest presences is not laughed at, it was the custom to give reasons to avoiding the locality. Yes, witchcraft was definitely a thing back in the days. Thank you. The background I had to change for a fireplace, and it is a really hot fire. That's only half of it, right? But I had to move over a little bit because it was burning my back really bad. It's really hot. I had to close the glass screen too. Ow, shit. Okay, don't do that. We'll let it stay that way. In our sensible age, since the Dunwich horror of 1928 was hushed up by those who had the town's and the world's welfare at heart, people shun it without knowing exactly why. Perhaps one reason, though, it cannot apply to the uninformed strangers is that the narratives of how repellently decadent, having gone far along that path of retrogression, he uses really complicated words here. So common, and I don't really, these are words that I read, but I never really say out loud. This is difficult. So common in many New England backwaters. They have come to form a race by themselves with a well-defined mental and physical stigmata of degeneracy and inbreeding. It sounds like West Virginia almost. Sorry, I had to just jab that in. The average of their intelligence is woefully low, whilst their annals reek of overt viciousness and of half-hidden... Oh, God. Okay. and of half... sorry. It's not a funny line. This is not funny. It just... it just hit me. And of half-hidden murders, incest, and deeds of almost unnameable violence and perversity. As I said, it was not funny. It just hit me. The old gentry representing the 2 or 3 armigerous families with which came Salem in 1962 have kept somewhat above the general level of decay, though many branches are sunk into the sordid populace so deeply that only their names remain as a key to the origin they disgrace. Yeah, Salem was pretty rough. I know. We just gotta tease West Virginia. A lot of the horrible reality TV shows started from there, like Honey Boo Boo. Come on, seriously. So we gotta dig once in a while. Some of the Wateles and bishops still send their eldest sons to Harvard and Miskatonic. He uses the word Miskatonic a lot. This is another story. I gotta look that up because I actually don't know. If somebody could actually post Miskatonic for me, please, the meaning of it, that would be awesome. Miskatonic. I imagine you all know how to spell it. Though those sons seldom return to the moldering gambrel roofs under which they and their ancestors were born. No one, even those who have the facts concerning the recent horror, can say that just what is the matter with Dunwich, though old legends speak of unhallowed rites and conclaves of the Indians, amidst which they are forbidden shapes of shadow out of the great rounded hills and made wild caught me off again, orgiastic prayers. It sounds very kinky, really. And after quarantine, any word even hinting towards that is getting to be a little... Prayers that were answered by loud crackings and rumblings from the ground below. In 1747, the Reverend Abijah Hoadley, newly come to the Congregational Church of Dunwich Village, preached a memorable sermon of the close presence of Satan and his imps, in which he said... Okay, in character now. Actually, I really can't do this in character. It must be allowed that the Why do I always do that whole Selden? He's not Selden, he's a northerner. So, it must be allowed that these blasphemies of infernal train of demons and matters are of too common knowledge to be denied. The cursed voices of Azil and Buzrael and Beelzebub and Belial... they're actually really good drinking buddies, to be honest with you. If you ever gotta get drunk, do it with Belial. But Beelzebub, he's a talker. He will never shut the hell up. All right? Being heard now from underground by above a score of credible witnesses now living. I myself did not more than a fortnight ago catch a very plain discourse of evil powers in the hill beyond my house, wherein there were a rattling and a rolling, groaning, screeching, and hissing. It sounds like, okay, never mind. Such as no things of this earth could raise up, and which must needs have come from those caves that only black magic can discover and only the devil can unlock. Wow, yes. it's getting pretty wild here. I think he was discussing an orgy. It's just kind of okay. Happy quarantine. Mr. Hoadley disappeared soon after delivering his sermon, but the text printed in Springfield is still extant. Springfield is West Massachusetts, kind of like the southern west area. I grew up in Springfield. Noises in the hills. I grew up in a lot of places in Massachusetts. It wasn't just one spot. Noises in the hills continued to be reported from year to year and still form a puzzle of geologists and physiographers. Other traditions tell of foul odors near the hill-crowning circles of stone pillars and of rushing, airy presences to be heard faintly at certain hours from stated points at the bottom of the great ravines, while still others try to explain the devil's hop yard. The devil's hop yard. Is he a brewer? Does the devil make beer? I would like to, not really, I don't know. A bleak, blasted hillside where no tree, shrub, or grass blade will grow. Then, too, the grown vocal on warm nights. Sorry, I'm distracted by a guest star. Hold on. My guest. Come here. Hey, come here. Come here. Come here, guest. Ah! Oh, Jesus. Okay, my guest co-star. I know, you're really unhappy. You do not like being on camera. Look, everybody, a cat. Now this video is awesome, okay? There we go. Go away. You served your purpose. Sorry. Can you read Love I'm Going, Time of Cholera? What? I don't know what that means. I'm drinking cheap wine too. $20 bottle of Ruffino from Tuscany. So, yeah, some Tuscan wine. Feel free to drink because you probably need to drink after reading this book out loud. The cat was awesome though. Okay, so I'm just gonna skip. Oh Jesus, they mentioned a bleak, blasted hillside where no tree, shrub, or grass blade will grow. Then too, the natives are mortally afraid of the numerous whippoorwills that grow vocal on warm nights. I just remembered what a whippoorwill was, and those things are really freaking annoying. Sorry, Vicky, I didn't know you were allergic to cats. Whippoorwills are, I don't know if it's a bird, I don't know what it is, okay, but like in the middle of the night, it goes, whippoorwill, 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 and it just drives me nuts. And like you'd hear them all summer long, and the whippoorwills are just absolutely, you never hear them down here, they're not down here, which is good. Okay, the numerous whippoorwills which grew vocal on warm nights. Yes, they are they are really freaking annoying. It is vowed that the birds are psychopomps. Okay, the birds are psychopomps lying in wait for the souls of the dying, and that they time their eerie cries in unison with the sufferer's. Oh Jesus, it really does make sense now. The sufferer's struggling breath. If they can catch the fleeting soul when it leaves the body, they instantly flutter away, chittering in demonic laughter. But if they fail, they subside gradually into disappointed silence. Yes, whippoorwills are really evil. What's the time of Clara? Okay. All right, I will definitely add the time of Clara to my list. That would actually be kind of fun. Maybe fun. I don't know yet. But whippoorwills are really, I think this is actually, if you ever witnessed whippoorwills, you will understand the terror that this book actually is now bringing into my soul. These tales, of course, are obsolete and ridiculous because they come down from the very old times. Dunwich is indeed, he really, really builds the story up, and it kind of is just a little borderline of annoying now. Sorry, I wanted to get a little bit more into the story going. He's like J.R. Tolkien, but a little like extra. He's like extra Tolkien-ish, right? These tales, of course, are obsolete and ridiculous because they come down from very old times. Dunwich is indeed ridiculously old, older by far than any of the communities within 30 miles of it. South of the village, one may still Hold on, I lost my place here. Um, down for the very old times. Dunwich is indeed ridiculously old, older by far than any of the communities within 30 miles of it. South of the village, one may still spy the cellular walls and chimney of the ancient Bishop House, which was built before 1700. Massachusetts is full of houses that are built in the 1700s. The House of Seven Gables, which is in Salem, was a really awesome place to visit. The plaster on the walls still stands today, and it has horsehairs in it to make it solidified. The insulation was actually old newspapers, crumpled up into the walls. Whilst the ruins of the mill of the falls, built in 1806, formed the most modern piece of architecture to be seen. That's pretty scary. Industry, and it's not unbelievable either. Industry did not flourish here in the 19th century. Factory movement proved short-lived. Oldest of all are the great rings of rough-hewn stone columns on the hilltops, but these are more generally attributed to the Indians than to the settlers. Deposits of skulls and bones found within these circles and around the sizable table-like rock on the Sentinel Hill sustained the popular belief that such spots were once the burial places of the... Every street name and stuff was named after like Indian words, and I still can't pronounce any of these things. Like Wingersheek, I think Wingersheek was actually Dutch. Pocumtucks, okay. Burial places of the Pocumtucks. Even though many ethnologists, disregarding the absurd improbability of such a theory, persist in believing the remains Caucasian. I wouldn't doubt it. The Indians were pretty awesome, and they kept people out for a long time. Plymouth Rock, I visited that every year for school field trips, and the Indians kept Plymouth Rock basically, this your land, you stay there. That's it. And that was for many years. They were pretty awesome. It's a shame that they got, it was a shame about that. Anyways, it was in the township of Dunwich, in a large and partly inhabited farmhouse set against the hillside 4 miles from the village and 1.5 miles from any other dwelling, that Wilbur Whiteley was born at 5 a.m. on Sunday. Very precise, the 2nd of February 1913. The date was recalled because it was Candleman's, which people in Dunwich curiously observe under another name, and because the noises in the hills that sounded, and all the dogs of the countryside had barked persistently throughout the night before. Less worthy of notice was the fact that the mother was one of the decadent Whateleys, a somewhat deformed, unattractive albino woman of 35, living with the aged and half-insane father, about whom the most frightful tales of wizardry had been whispered in his youth. Lavinia Whately had no husband, but according to custom of the region, made no attempt to disavow the child, concerning the other side of whose ancestry the country folk might and did speculate as widely as they chose. And it's actually kind of, it's still a reality in Massachusetts. They still have this kind of belief, and you do have the crazy people. And I witnessed a lot of that. This is why I like H.P. Lovecraft. It kind of like, it hits home really, right where the whole regions where I grew up. Salem, Massachusetts, Portsmouth, Portsmouth is up north. Where Rhode Island areas and all that stuff. Whose ancestry? Okay, on the other side. Sorry, I keep getting distracted because it's bringing back old memories of the area, the region. So it's actually kind of interesting to read again. Whose ancestry the country folk might and did speculate as widely as they chose. On the contrary, she seemed strangely proud of the dark, goatish-looking infant who formed such a contrast to her own sickly and pink-eyed albinism, and was heard to mutter many curious prophecies about its unusual powers and tremendous future. And that would describe most of Salem, Massachusetts, in a nutshell. And yes, it's definitely it's very accurate. They don't all look they're not all, of course, they're not all albinos. They just and they're not all deformed anymore, but they're just they do like to have their own prophecies. Lavinia was one who was apt to mutter such things, for she was a lone creature given to wandering amidst thunderstorms in the hills and trying to read the great odorous books which her father had inherited through 2 centuries of Whately's, and which were fast falling to pieces with age and wormholes. She had never been to school, but was filled with disjointed scraps of ancient lore that old Whately had taught her. The remote farmhouse, just because you don't go to school does not mean you're not smart. There are a lot of smart people who don't go to school. The remote farmhouse had always been feared because of old Whately's reputation for black magic and the unexplained death by violence of Mrs. Whately when Lavinia was 12 years old and not helped to make the place popular. Isolated among strange influences, Lavinia was found of wild and grandiose daydreams and singular occupations, nor was her leisure much taken up by household cares of a home from which all standards of order and cleanliness had long since disappeared. Sounds like they live in a kind of a squalor, dirty old place. And I really like how he describes it way better than I did. Squalor and old and dirty. I mean, but he just was like, he was so poetic in his writing on this. He even made it sound nice. There was a hideous screaming which echoed above even the hill noises and the dogs barking in the night. Wilbur was born, there was no comma there. And the night Wilbur was born, but no doctor or midwife presided at his coming. Neighbors knew nothing of him till a week afterward, when the old Whately drove his sleigh through the snow into Dunwich village and discoursed incoherently into the group of loungers at Osborne's general store. There seemed to be a change in the old man, an added element of furtiveness in the clouded brain which subtly transformed him to his subject of fear. Though he was not one to be perturbed by any common family event, amidst it all he shewed, S-H-E-W-E-D. I'd never seen that word before, so forgive me for mispronouncing it. Amidst it all he shewed some trace of the pride latter noticed in his daughter, and what he said of the child's paternity was remembered by many of his hearers years after. Okay. I don't care what folks think. Lavinia's boy looked like his pa. He wouldn't. Okay. This when he really writes this eloquently, but it's really difficult to read. He wouldn't look like nothing ye expect. Ye needn't think that only folks in the folks hereabouts. Lavinia's read some and has seed some things the most of y'all only tell about. I calculate her man is a good husband, and you can find this side of Aylesbury, and if you knowed as much about the hills as I do ye wouldn't ask no better church wedding nor hern. Let me tell you something. Someday you folks will hear a child of Lavinia's calling its father's name on top of old Sentinel Hill. Okay, he writes it really well, but he writes these well, but it's difficult to read. The only persons who saw Wilbur during the first months of life were old Zachariah Whately of the undecayed Whateleys, and Earl Sawyer's common-law wife, Mamie Bishop. Mamie's visit was frankly one of curiosity, and of the subsequent tales did justice to her observations, but Zechariah came to lead a pair of Alderney cows which old Whately had bought of his son Curtis. This marked the beginnings of a course of cattle buying on the part of small Wilbur's family, which ended only in 1928, when the Dunwich horror came and went. Yet at no time, okay, so we're getting to 1928 when the Dunwich horror happened, but we're in the future, I guess. So somebody survived. Yet at no time did the ramshackle Whately barn seem overcrowded with livestock. there came a period when people were curious enough to steal up and count the herd that grazed precariously on the steep hillside above the old farmhouse, and they could never find more than 10 or 12 anemic, bloodless looking specimens. Sounds like the cows were really underfed. Let's see. Evidently, some blight or distemper, perhaps sprung from the unwholesome pasturage of the diseased fungi and timbers of the filthy barn, caused a heavy mortality amongst the Whately animals. Odd wounds and sores, having come something of the aspect of incisions, seemed to afflict the visible cattle, and once or twice during the earlier months certain collars fancied they could discern similar sores about the throats of the gray, unshaven old man and his slatternly, crinkly-haired albino. Sorry. There's a guy at work that his name is spelled the same way. We pronounce it albino, but it's spelled albino. So now I'm saying albino. That's not a joke. I do work with a guy named albino. In the spring after Wilbur's birth, Lavinia resumed her customary rambles in the hills, bearing in her misproportioned arms the swarthy child. Public interest in the Whateleys subsided after most of the country folk had seen the baby, and no one bothered to comment on the swift development which that newcomer seemed every day to exhibit. Wilbur's growth was indeed phenomenal, for within 3 months of his birth he had attained a size of muscular power not usually found in infants under a full year of age. His motions and even his vocal sounds shewed a restraint and deliberateness highly peculiar of an infant, and no one was really unprepared when at 7 months he began to walk unassisted, with falterings which in other month was sufficient to remove. It was somewhat after this time on Halloween that a great blaze was seen at midnight on the top of Sentinel Hill, where the old table-like stone stands amidst its tumulus of ancient bones. Considerable talk was started, with Silas Bishop, of the undecayed bishops, mentioned having seen the boy running sturdily up that hill ahead of his mother about an hour before the blaze was remarked. Silas was rounding up stray heifer. Heifer is a cow. But he nearly forgot his mission when the fleeting spied the two figures in the dim light of his lantern. They darted almost noiselessly through the underbrush, and the astonished watcher seemed to think they were entirely unclothed. Afterward, he could not be sure, but the boy, who may have had some kind of fringed belt and a pair of dark trunks or trousers on. Wilbur was never subsequently seen alive and conscious without complete and tightly buttoned attire. The disarrangement or threatened disarrangement of which always seemed to fill him with anger and alarm. His contrast with his squalid mother and grandfather in this respect was thought very notable until the horror of 1928 suggested the most valid of reasons. The next January, gossips were mildly interested in the fact that Lebanese black brat had commenced to talk at the age of only 11 months. In this term, black brat means dark magic, it's just black magic. His speech was somewhat remarkable, both because of its difference from the ordinary accents of the region and because it displayed a freedom from infantile lisping of which many children of 3 or 4 might well be proud. The boy was not talkative, yet when he spoke, he seemed to reflect some elusive element wholly unopposed by Dunwich and its denizens. The strangeness did not reside in which he said, or even in the simple idioms he used, but seemed vaguely linked with the intonation or which the internal organs that produced the spoken sounds. His facial aspect, too, was remarkable for its maturity, for though he shared his mother's and grandfather's chinliness, chinliness. I've never. He had a like a Superman chin, right? His firm and precautiously shaped nose united with the expression of a large, dark, almost Latin eyes to give him an air of quasi-adulthood and well-high preternatural intelligence. He was, however, exceedingly ugly despite his appearance of brilliancy. There were sometimes there being something almost goatish or animalistic about his thick lips, large, pored, yellowish skin, coarse, crinkly hair, and oddly elongated ears. Was he an elf? He was soon disliked even more decidedly than his mother and grandsire, and all conjectures about him were spied with reference to the bygone magic of old Whately, and how the hills once shook when he shrieked of dreadful name Yog Soloth. Oh, Sothalth. I didn't want to really conjure that demon in my den here, so I wanted to say it wrong. This one. In the midst of a circle of stones with great book open in his arms before him. Dogs abhorred the boy, and he was always obliged to take various defensive measures against their barking menace. And so ends part 2 of the Dunwich Horror. I actually wanted to only read for half an hour, or 15 minutes actually. We're going to continue on part 3 tomorrow, or maybe actually probably not on Easter Sunday. Probably Monday night then. So have a good night. Thank you for watching, and cheers. Enjoy your weekend.